Welcome to Somebody Pinch Me, the podcast that doesn't ask for your comfort, just your attention. Each episode, we break down the lies baked into everyday life in America, from the paycheck that won't stretch to the corporations cashing in on your burnout. Here, we talk about the truth they're counting on you to ignore or not notice. I'm Sonia in Cyber. Let's get into it. You ever get a sinking feeling in your stomach or chest when you realize the news you're hearing isn't really news anymore? When what should be a press briefing starts sounding more like a PR campaign? When real journalists get locked out of rooms they should be inside? When the people paid with our tax dollars start treating truth like a privilege, not a right? You know that moment when you can almost feel the narrative tightening, like hands slowly wrapping around the throat of democracy? Yeah. Me too. This is Somebody Pinch Me, and today, when the truth gets muzzled, let's get into it. Let's get something straight from the jump. State-controlled media isn't some distant dystopian plot twist. It's one of the oldest tricks in the authoritarian playbook. Nazi Germany perfected propaganda through centralized control of information. The Soviet Union built entire media empires to erase dissent. Modern autocracies from Russia to North Korea rely on state media not just to spin stories, but to erase truth itself. Because when you can control the narrative, you can control what people believe. And when you control what they believe, you can control what they'll allow. Over the past months, the Pentagon has quietly rolled out new media regulations, buried under vague language about security and information management. These regulations limit independent press access, tighten control over interviews, and restrict what gets released to the public about U.S. military actions, defense spending, and foreign operations. Several major networks have been publicly outed or blacklisted for pushing too hard or reporting stories that didn't toe the official line. And suddenly, instead of watchdogs in the room, we're getting carefully curated narratives spoon-fed by Pentagon-approved voices. On paper, it's national security, but in practice, it's a controlled pipeline of information about how billions of taxpayer dollars are spent. It's a curtain being pulled tighter between the people and the people in power. And history tells us exactly what happens when those curtains stay closed too long. This isn't about being anti-military or anti-American. This is about accountability. When you silence the press, you silence oversight. And when oversight disappears, corruption doesn't just creep in, it floods in. The Pentagon already has a long history of missing money. Trillions unaccounted for over decades. Endless black budgets, no-bid contracts, private defense contractors profiting while schools close and families can't afford insulin. Now imagine all of that happening with even less sunlight, less questioning, less truth. This is how power turns war into profit without ever needing permission from the people paying for it. The press is often called the fourth branch of government for a reason. When the executive, legislative, and judicial branches fail to hold each other accountable, the press is often what cracks things open. But a muzzled press? That's an authoritarian's dream, because power thrives in silence. When information gets filtered, censored, and shaped by the same people who benefit from its control, we no longer have a democracy, but rather a theater show. You know what happens after enough press conferences get sanitized? People stop expecting answers. They stop asking questions. They stop believing there's any point. And that apathy, that's the real win for the people in power. If they can convince you that nothing matters, they don't have to silence you because you'll silence yourself. I felt that weight, that creeping numbness when you see one more whistleblower punished, one more journalist pushed out, one more network punished for telling the truth. A lot of people think media manipulation is the final stage, like, well, that's it, democracy's over. But it's not the end. It's another alarm bell. It's the moment where silence can either harden into complicity or fracture into resistance. Every movement that's ever broken propaganda has had the same spark. People telling the truth louder than the lie. Independent journalists, citizen reporters, whistleblowers, communities refusing to let their stories die. Truth-telling is resistance, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. Not everyone is going to be a war reporter or an investigative journalist, and that's okay. But resistance to propaganda takes many forms and is absolutely a responsibility of all of us. by sharing credible, independent reporting, funding or supporting watchdog organizations, protecting journalists, not vilifying them, talking to friends and family about what's happening, refusing to let this slide quietly, documenting, amplifying, remembering. Silence is their weapon. Noise, relentless, factual, collective noise, is ours. Here's the thing about darkness. It only works if we stop striking matches. Every story we tell, every fact we refuse to let disappear, every voice we defend, that's resistance. The Pentagon can tighten the rules. The networks can get punished. The truth can be buried for a moment, but it can't stay buried forever, not as long as we continue talking about it. This country doesn't need more sanitized press briefings. It needs people brave enough to tell the truth, even when power hates them for it. Journalism isn't the enemy, propaganda is. And silence is the soil it grows in. So keep asking questions. Keep reading between the lines. Support independent media. Be loud, be relentless, because the story of a nation is only as free as the voices allowed to tell it.